Chapter 10. The Bridge Builder's Code. The journal wasn't written in paragraphs. It was built. Layered like lumber, notations like nails, margins full of diagrams and scripture, quotes from preachers Jake had never heard of, and construction terms that somehow bled with conviction. Jake sat at the old workbench, the journal spread open beneath a clamp to keep it flat. Morning sunlight filtered through the window, dust dancing in the beams like memory itself. He ran his fingers across the worn leather cover, thumb tracing the creased spine. This wasn't just a record of plans, it was a code. The first one caught him off guard. Anchor before span. Hebrews 6:19. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. Jake had read it a dozen times before realizing it wasn't about bridge mechanics. It was about faith. You don't build out until you've built down. Without an anchor, all progress becomes performance. He kept reading. Lay the first beam with prayer, not pressure. The span ice only as strong as the sacrifice beneath it. You don't raise a structure without first lowering your pride. Luke 14:28. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost? The words stirred something in Jake, not nostalgia, conviction. He flipped the page. Pressure reveals the fault line. James 1:2-4. Consider it pure joy, when you face trials, that you may be mature and complete. He remembered his dad teaching him how to spot microcracks in poured concrete. It's not the pour that breaks it. It's the pressure afterward. Jake never forgot that. Now it echoed louder than ever. Jake traced the handwriting with his thumb. His father's ink faded but firm. Reinforce what's weak before pressure reveals it. He sat back on the stool in the workshop, letting the words sink past muscle memory into something deeper. And just like that, a memory surfaced, clearer than it had any right to be. The summer air had been thick with sawdust and lemonade, and teenage Jake stood on the porch with a pry bar in one hand, frustration in the other. This one's not even cracked, he protested, pointing to a weathered stairboard. His father knelt beside the next riser, inspecting it with calloused fingers. No, he said calmly, but listen. He pressed down with his boot. A low creak groaned up from the step. Jake rolled his eyes. So, it squeaks. His dad looked up at him. If it creaks now, it'll split under pressure later. Don't hide weak boards with pretty paint, Jake. Reinforce them. Jake paused, then gave a crooked grin. Is this still about the stairs? A smile tugged at his father's mouth. It's always about more than stairs. They worked in silence after that, removing planks, replacing them one by one. Jake remembered how long it took, how careful his dad was, and how the new steps never once creaked. Back in the workshop, Jake folded the journal closed and stared at the half-drawn bridge plans on the table. He knew exactly what needed reinforcing, and it wasn't just the support beams. His dad hadn't been trying to impress anyone. He'd been trying to impart something, knowing Jake might not listen in conversation, but maybe, one day, he'd read and understand. Just then, Evan stepped into the workshop, wiping his hands on a rag. You still in here scribbling like a mad scientist? Jake looked up from the journal, his eyes brighter than they'd been in days. It's more than scribbling. My dad left something. Evan leaned over the table, glancing at the journal. Thought that was just a bunch of project notes. Measurements, supply lists, deadlines, the kind of stuff only a foreman would care about. Didn't figure there'd be, actual words that matter tucked in there. Guess your old man had more layers than I gave him credit for. That's what I thought too. But listen to this. Lay the first beam with prayer, not pressure. I used to think he was just poetic, but now I see it. Every line, it's a blueprint for the bridge, yeah, but also for life. Evan raised a brow. So what, he was like a carpenter prophet? Jake chuckled. Maybe. Or maybe he just knew that wood rots and plans fall apart. But if you build with the right heart, It'll stand even when you're gone. Evan nodded slowly, then tapped the table. Sounds like he was trying to build more than a bridge. Jake looked down at the journal again. He was trying to build me. They sat in the quiet hum of the workshop for a moment. Jake scribbling something in the back pages. Evan watching with something close to respect. You gonna add your own notes? Evan asked. Jake flipped to the final blank pages. Already started. Evan smirked. Careful. Give it a few more entries, and someone's gonna think you're the prophet. Jake grinned. Nah, I'm just the guy with a pencil, finally paying attention. Evan nodded once, clapped the table, and stood. Well, let me know if any of those scribbles tell you how to fix the wiring in my garage, 'cause I'm all ears, Pencil Prophet. Jake shook his head, smiling, as Evan backed out the door. The journal remained open on the table, the words quiet but weighty, like beams laid in faith, waiting to hold something more than just weight. That afternoon, Jake pulled the journal out to the site. The bridge stood quiet in the wind, half complete, half still a dream. He walked to the end of the last beam they'd secured before the permit freeze and sat down, legs dangling over the river. The air was cool. The water whispered below. Somewhere in the distance, a hammer tapped faintly on someone else's project. But here, there was only stillness. He flipped to the back of the journal. The handwriting shifted. Same author, but different season. These were notes clearly written later in life, shorter, shakier, more direct. Then one stopped him cold. Journal entry. Jake, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. But maybe the bridge isn't. Maybe neither of us are, really. You were never meant to build what I built. You were meant to build what I believed in. That's different. Find the code. Don't just read it. Live it. T.W. Jake stared at the page until the words blurred. The river moved beneath him. His breath caught in his chest, not from sadness exactly, but from something heavier, holier. He sat there, caught between grief and glory, memory and mission. Then he stood. He ran his hand along the grain of the beam, palm open like a benediction. He could see it now. This wasn't just his father's bridge. It was a blueprint for something bigger. It was his inheritance, not of land, but of legacy. Back at the workshop, he paused at the drafting table. Then, carefully, he hung the journal on the hook above it, not to shelve it, but to honor it, to place it where blueprints belong. Then he reached for a clean notepad, set it beside a sharpened pencil, and began sketching again. This time, not just boards and beams, but belief. Not just structure, but story. Not just what his father left behind, but what he was choosing to carry forward. And in the top corner of the first blank page, Jake wrote, Builder's Code Number 1. Start with surrender, then pick up the hammer. Faith isn't built on what you know. It's built on who you trust when the plans fall through. He set the pencil down and looked out toward the unfinished frame. This was just the beginning. But this time, he wasn't building alone.